Hi, I'm Tess and welcome to Dusty Betty. Today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts and taking you along for a ride on the Orbea Laufey. This is the new Orbea Laufey. This is the HLTD build, and this is much more aggressive than its predecessor. They've upped the travel in the fork to 140 millimeters. They've slackened it out to, I think, 65.5 degree head tube angle. So this is a pretty fun machine. I've had several weeks to ride this, and I'm going to take you along and give you some of my thoughts on this bike. Let's do it. I did convert this bike to tubeless, and I also took all of the tokens out of the fork. This had 3 tokens or volume spacers in there, but I'm so light I get a much better ride out of this fork with all those tokens out. So this bike is a very capable climber. If anything, I'm the limiting factor on it. Been riding it all over Sedona, and it does really, really well. This bike's probably a little bit heavy for me. Comes in at 29.8 pounds. That being said, I kind of adjust to it, and I'm still able to do a lot of really fun riding on this bike. The 2.6 wide tires are nice, but they don't feel as wide as some of the 2.6 tires I've run before. And I think that's because the 2.6s that I've run were set on a wider rim than this, so it kind of splays them out a little more. You get a little more surface area. Another nice thing about having the 2.6 tires is it allows me to run the tire pressure a little lower. Gives me just a little bit of extra squish, which is really nice on a hardtail. I'm 5'4", and I decided to go with a medium, and that just got me kind of more in the range that I like for reach, because I like to do a lot of descending. It's nice to have a little bit longer bike. It just feels a little more stable. When I descend on this bike, one thing I really love is it feels really planted and really solid. This bike is just nice and beefy. I feel like you can really trust it on the descents. For me, because this bike is almost 30 pounds, it does require a little more output of energy from me on the climbs, but it's really not terrible. I mean, I still ride it, and I make it where I'm going. And, you definitely get the reward for it when you start charging downhill. You feel really solid, really planted. This is kind of classic Sedona right here, where it's just kind of a little up, a little down, kind of technical, so you're not always going very fast. You don't always have a good run at it. It's just kind of slow and technical. But this trail will be great. It gives us a little bit of both. We'll get some smooth stuff later on. One thing I really love about riding hardtails so much of the time is, a trail that is easy is a little more challenging. I might have to session things that I wouldn't on my full suspension. Another wash. And this bike has 12 speed, but I find that I hardly ever use that biggest gear here. We get a lot of punchy little climbs like that out of washes and stuff like that, and kind of need the power. Woo! I mean, that is so chattery right there, but this bike just sails right through it. You know, it just is so planted. I feel like this is the kind of hardtail that, you know, you can trust the frame if you're wanting to ride some gnarly stuff, or have the option even to ride some gnarly stuff. It's not very easy to bunny hop. I don't know if that has to do with the chainstay length, but I will say that. Woo! On, pumpy. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Ah, so good. Descending, this bike does better, like the faster I take it, when I'm trying to mince my way through loose stuff like this, or doing a lot of intermittent up and down climbing. It's maybe not very precise in steering. It wants to be leaned more for the turns. So, yeah, higher speed on the descents. And just so you guys know, when I weighed this bike, that 29.8 pounds, it does include pedals. A lot of times they don't include pedals in bike weight just because everybody's pedals are different, but I wanted to know how much it weighed total, so there you have it. Oh yeah. Those wider tires really do give you a nice ride on a hardtail. I'm amazed at some of the chattery sections I've been able to roll through, and almost, you know, depending on how chattery, almost forget I'm on a hardtail. Really helps smooth a lot of that out. So I'm gonna say this bike is a capable climber, a super fun descender, but not a super playful bike. So I did some back-to-back laps riding the Orbea Laufey and then riding my Ibis DV9, just because I was hoping that maybe that would accentuate some of the differences between those bikes and help me describe more. Right now, I've got an angle set on my Ibis DV9, so these bikes actually have about the same head tube angle. Riding this lap on my Ibis DV9, now this bike is really, really light. You kind of have to let it dance a little bit more when things get chunky, and the bike is going to move around a little bit. And because of that, you know, my body has to absorb a little bit more of that. The Ibis was a little bit more fun to kind of like pump in the turns, and I don't know if maybe it has a shorter chainstay. It's also a little bit more playful when I'm trying to manual off of things or bunny hop off of things. That could also be the weight of the bike. But when I compare it to the Laufey, on this particular trail, most of this trail has a lot of just kind of little constant chatter. And I actually feel like this trail is more fun on the Laufey because this bike charges. It's got that more planted feel, and also having the wider tires allowed me to run lighter pressure. And I was amazed at how when I was going through some of that little chattery fast stuff on a couple of quick little down sections, it almost felt like I had 110, 115 mil of travel in the back. It wasn't beating me up in the back like you might expect an aluminum hardtail to do. I still love my Ibis DV9, and that's my personal bike. I feel like it's still probably what I'd choose for me because I am smaller and lighter. This bike gives me a lot of versatility. You know, when I do want to haul those longer riding days, it's awesome. And even though it's a little bit slower through some of that chunk and chatter, I can still get it through there. But it does make it really clear that if that is what you really want to do on your hardtail, is really charge it hard. This bike was a blast on some of that chattery tech downhill stuff. Anyway, I hope that being able to compare these two side by side helped me articulate a little bit more of what the Orbea Laufey is like. You know, I've thought about the weight of this bike a lot. It doesn't feel as heavy when I'm riding it as I think when I'm just sitting at home thinking about the numbers. So take that for what it's worth. It's more going to come down to what kind of riding you want to do. Let's take a little bit more of a peek at this bike. One thing that's kind of interesting about how the drivetrain is spec'd is you'll notice that the derailleur is XT. But it's important to take a close look and know what you're getting, because the cassette and the shifter are both a little bit like lower end for Shimano. They're the SLX. And so, you know, they kind of know that people are going to look at it. That's what they're going to look at, is the derailleur, and be like, oh, it's XT. But I mean, it's good to just be aware of everything that you're getting. And that's okay. That's okay to spend a little more in some places and not in others. It's got 180mm rotors. And the way that the brakes are routed, they are internal. It's very tidy, which some people will really love because it's out of the way and it looks clean. But it's a good thing to just be aware of and know, because if brakes are something that you plan on eventually upgrading, when you put new brakes in, you will have to completely bleed the system. Whereas if they were routed externally, you'd be snipping some zip ties and you could pop a whole system in there without having to deal with bleeding. Like I said, it's neither good nor bad. It just kind of depends on what you want, and it's a good thing to be aware of. One thing that I really like on this bike is that it has a place where you could bolt on a bash guard. You know, I ride a lot of rocky terrain. If this was my personal bike, I would be putting a bash guard on there. And so I really think that it's awesome that they do that, especially because this is such an aggressive and capable hardtail. So as I mentioned, it's got the 2.6 wide tires. I do think it would be nice if these were spec'd on a little bit wider rim. The Recon, where I live in Arizona, hasn't been a great fit. I tend to lose traction a lot on my climbs. That's not saying that there's anything wrong with the Recon. I'm just letting you know it didn't do well in my environment. You know, really what we're looking at is the frame, because that's the only thing that you can't change on a bike like this. And I will say this bike feels really planted, really solid. I love the 140mm travel fork. I think it does awesome. You know, between that and the 29-inch wheels and the slacker head tube angle, like all of those really make this bike charge downhill. I think this bike would be best for people who need a capable bike to get them up the hills where they want to go, but they really, really want to cut loose on those downhills. That's where this bike is really going to shine. Anyway, I had a lot of fun on this bike. I found it to be super capable. I think whether you're going to ride a hardtail exclusively and you need something aggressive, or you just want an aggressive hardtail to take and rip on some of your favorite trails to make them a little more interesting, you know, either way, I think this bike could fit the bill for you. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about the Orbea Laufey and taking a closer look. Thanks so much for watching. Get dusty.